The last sound I heard before everything went black was my husband's voice trembling through the cold mountain air. "Hilda, don't move. Play dead." His whisper cut through the ringing in my ears, through the pain that screamed from every broken bone. "My name is Hilda. I'm 60 years old, and 3 days ago, my son and daughter-in-law tried to kill me. They pushed my husband Henry and me off a 90-foot cliff, hoping our broken bodies would be found as nothing more than victims of a tragic hiking accident. But before I tell you how we survived, you need to understand how we got there, how our perfect family turned into a nightmare built on secrets, greed, and betrayal. For 4 decades, Henry and I lived what most would call a good, simple life. We had 2 sons, Richard, our firstborn, full of laughter and warmth, and Damien, 5 years younger, quieter, but still loved with every piece of our hearts. Henry owned a small carpentry shop, and I worked as a teacher at the local elementary school. Our home was modest, filled with books, wooden furniture Henry had carved, and the scent of coffee every morning. On Sundays, the family gathered for dinner around the oak table Henry built by hand. Richard would talk about his dreams of becoming an engineer while Damien sat silently picking at his food. Back then, I thought his silence meant shyness. Now I know it was something darker taking root. When Richard turned 20, everything changed. The brothers fought constantly over things they wouldn't explain. I'd hear whispers in the hallway that stopped when I walked in. Then one October night, 25 years ago, Richard didn't come home. At dawn, the police found his body at the bottom of the gorge. They called it an accident. I wanted to believe them because the truth would have destroyed me. Damien was calm during the funeral, too calm. I told myself people grieve differently, but his stillness that day has haunted me ever since. Henry held me through every tear, and we swore we'd survive together for the son we had left. Damien seemed to change after that helpful, attentive, loving. It felt like healing. It was really disguise. Years passed. Damien married Melissa, a lovely girl who called me mom and brought laughter back into our home. They had 2 children, and for a while I believed life had finally forgiven us. But 6 months ago, everything began to unravel. Henry and I decided to update our will. After 40 years of work, we had saved almost $200,000 plus our house and the land my parents left me. Damien insisted we let him and Melissa handle the arrangements. "Mom, Dad, you're both 60 now," he said with that gentle smile I once thought was kindness. "It's important to have things in order," Melissa added. "We just want to make sure you're protected." I thought it was love. It was calculation. At the lawyer's office, Damien pushed to be named our sole heir. He promised he'd distribute everything fairly among the grandchildren. Henry, ever trusting, agreed. I hesitated but signed the papers anyway, telling myself it was just a formality. That night, as I cooked dinner, something gnawed at my chest, a whisper that I'd just made a terrible mistake. Over the next few weeks, their visits became more frequent, but something had changed. They no longer came to share meals or laughter. They came with suggestions. "You should sell this big house," Melissa said, glancing around like an appraiser. "It's too much for 2 people your age." Damien nodded. "Mom, you're being irrational. If you fell, we couldn't reach you in time." His tone was sharp, almost scolding. For the first time in my life, my son's voice frightened me. I confided in Henry, but he dismissed my fears. "He just cares about us," he said, though there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Damien's next idea was even more alarming. "You should give me power of attorney," he suggested casually one evening while Melissa brewed tea in my kitchen as if she owned the place. "It's just for precaution. If anything happens, we can manage things easily." I smiled politely, but my heart thudded in warning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Henry breathe beside me, wondering when my son's voice had begun to sound like a stranger's. The next morning, I called my sister Harriet. She listened silently, then said, Hilda, doesn't it strike you as odd? Damien doesn't need money. Why is he so eager to control yours? Her words felt like a slap. That afternoon, when Damien came by again, I confronted him. Why do you need control over our finances? Your father and I are perfectly capable. His eyes hardened. Mom, it's not control, he said quietly. It's responsibility. But the word dripped with menace. Melissa chimed in. We just want what's best for you. Her smile was sweet, too sweet. When they left, Henry and I argued for the first time in years. I accused him of blind trust. He accused me of paranoia. As we washed the dishes, I asked softly, Do you remember how Damien was before Richard died? Henry froze the plate in his hands, trembling. His voice dropped to a whisper. Hilda, there are things about Richard's death I never told you. Henry's words sliced through the air like a blade. For 25 years, we had never spoken of that night. I turned to him, my heart pounding. What do you mean? I asked. He sank into a chair, his shoulders heavy with the weight of something he'd carried for too long. The night Richard died, he said slowly, Damien wasn't in his room. I saw him leave the house around 8:00 p.m. I followed because something in his eyes scared me. Henry's voice trembled as he continued. I found them at the gorge. They were arguing, screaming things I couldn't make out. Richard had papers in his hand, bank statements. He was accusing Damien of stealing from our savings. Damien denied it, but the anger in his voice, it wasn't just guilt. It was hate. Then it happened. Richard shouted something about going to the police and Damien pushed him. I saw it, Hilda. He didn't trip. Damien pushed him. My breath caught. You saw it. You saw him kill his brother. Henry's eyes filled with tears. He begged me to believe it was an accident. He was shaking, crying, saying Richard fell when he tried to defend himself. And God help me, I believed him. I couldn't bear to lose both sons in one night. His voice broke. I covered it up. I told the police it must have been an accident. I thought Damien had learned his lesson. I was wrong. I couldn't speak. Every memory of my younger son, the birthday hugs, the family dinners, his gentle smiles crumbled into ashes. He's been stealing from us ever since I whispered. Henry nodded. I saw small amounts disappear from our account. I pretended not to notice. I thought he'd changed, but when he started asking about the will, I knew he hadn't. The truth settled between us like a poison. For 25 years, I'd mourned one son while nurturing the killer of the other. We have to go to the police, I said finally. Henry shook his head. With what proof? It's my word against his. And if they find out I covered for him, I'll go to jail too. Days passed in suffocating silence. Damien kept visiting, each time pushing harder. He wanted the house sold, the assets transferred. One evening, his voice turned cold. Mom, you have to trust me, he said. If you don't let us handle things, someone else might make decisions you won't like. That's when I saw it, hatred. Not the kind born from anger, but from entitlement. The kind that destroys families. A week later, he called with a new idea. Mom, Dad, Melissa and I were thinking, he said over the phone, why not celebrate your 40th wedding anniversary with something special? We'll take you to the mountains. You've always wanted to go. My blood froze. Henry and I exchanged a glance. The same gorge, the same kind of trip, the same setup. That's so thoughtful, I said, forcing my voice steady. Let us think about it. After we hung up, I whispered, He's going to kill us. Henry nodded grimly. We can't run. If we refuse, he'll find another way, something that looks even more like an accident. We spent that night planning. Henry hid his phone in his jacket set to record everything. If we don't make it, he said, Someone has to know the truth. He wrote a letter to my sister Harriet explaining everything and hiding it in the drawer with our legal papers. If we die, he said she'll find it. We held each other that night, whispering goodbye in case morning never came. Saturday dawned bright and cruel. Damien arrived cheerful, whistling. "Ready for your big adventure," he said. Melissa followed, radiant as ever, carrying picnic baskets. I couldn't stop thinking of her hands, those same hands that would soon push me to my death. During breakfast, Damien spread a map on the table. "We'll hike to the lookout. It's got an amazing view." "Isn't it too dangerous?" I asked weakly. "For people our age," Melissa smiled. "Oh, it is a beginner trail. Even kids could do it." Their confidence terrified me. As we loaded the car, I saw Damien checking his backpack ropes, harnesses, even a small shovel. "What's that for?" I asked. "Safety," he said smoothly. "Just in case." The 2-hour drive felt endless. Henry quietly squeezed my hand and pressed the record button. I stared out the window, memorizing the trees and sky as if they were the last things I'd ever see. When we arrived, the air smelled of pine and damp earth. It could have been beautiful if not for the fact that I knew I'd die there. The trail was steep, each step heavier than the last. Melissa skipped ahead, snapping photos, her laughter echoing like a cruel melody. "Look at those wildflowers," she said, pretending to enjoy herself. Behind us, Damien kept a slow pace, his footsteps deliberate. "Doing okay, Mom," he called sweetly. After an hour, Melissa pointed toward a rocky cliff off the trail. "Let's take pictures up there. It has the best view." My stomach dropped. I looked at Henry. He nodded once, barely perceptible. We followed them up the narrow path, the ground loose beneath our feet. At the top, the view opened into a vast valley. Melissa positioned herself with the camera. "Smile," she said. "This one's for the album." Henry and I stood together, arms around each other, hearts racing. Damien moved behind us. "One more, Mom," he said. "Step back a little." And then, as the wind howled across the mountain, I felt the ground vanish beneath me. We fell. The world turned into a blur of windstone and screaming. My body hit the ground with a sound I can never forget. Bones shattering, air bursting from my lungs, blood filling my mouth. Pain exploded through me, but then, through the ringing in my ears, came Henry's voice, hoarse, broken, desperate. "Hilda, don't move. Play dead." That voice anchored me. I forced my breathing shallow, and my eyes stilled, though every nerve in my body screamed for help. A few feet away, I heard groaning Damien and Melissa. They'd fallen too. "Melissa," Damien gasped. "Are you okay?" "My leg. I think it's broken," she whimpered. Then in the same breath, her voice turned cold. "What about them?" "They're dead," Damien said after a pause. "Both of them. Eyes open. No breathing." A silence followed, heavy and unreal. Then Melissa let out a shaky laugh. "Perfect," she hissed. "It worked." "Well, except for us falling too." I felt bile rise in my throat. They thought they'd won. "Once we get out," Damien said, his voice strained but steady, "we'll call for help. Say it was an accident." Dad slipped, tried to grab Mom, and they both fell. We tried to help, but we went down too. Got it, Melissa replied. "Poor us, the traumatized survivors." I wanted to scream, to curse them, to make them see the horror of what they'd done. But I stayed still. If they thought we were dead, that was our only chance. After what felt like hours, their voices grew faint. They were crawling away, searching for a way out. When the silence returned, I dared to whisper, "Henry." "I'm here," he groaned. His voice was weak but alive. "My leg's broken. Ribs too, maybe. I'm alive," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "But I think my arm's shattered." He managed a painful laugh. "Then we're even." For a while, we just lay there listening to the wind howl through the gorge. Then Henry whispered, "Before it's too late, you need to know everything." He told me what he'd hidden all those years. The night Richard died, he'd followed our sons to the gorge after seeing Damien sneak out. Richard had papers, he said. Proof that Damien was stealing from us. He confronted him. Damien snapped. He yelled that he was tired of living in Richard's shadow, that he deserved more. Then he pushed him, Hilda. He pushed him on purpose. Tears streamed down my face. Why didn't you tell me? Because he was our last son, Henry whispered. And I was a coward. I couldn't destroy what was left of our family. I thought it was a mistake that guilt would make him a better man. I was wrong. The truth hit harder than the fall. My son, the boy I'd raised, loved, forgiven, was a murderer twice over. He killed his brother, I said through sobs, and now he's tried to kill us for money. Henry's breathing grew shallow. We can't die here, he said. The phone. It's recording. Everything from before the fall. We have Melissa's voice, Damien's words. It's enough. Hours passed before we heard voices in the distance. Rescues, shouts, the thud of boots above. Damien's voice rose among them, perfectly performed. Please. My parents fell. Help us. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed him. He sounded terrified, grieving. A true son in pain. The rescuers descended ropes, scraping the rock. I kept my body limp as they checked us. This one still has a pulse, one man said, referring to Henry. The woman's faint, but alive. Let's move fast. Melissa was crying loudly above. I can't believe this happened, she wailed. We were just taking pictures. Her performance was chillingly perfect. Within minutes, we were strapped to stretchers airlifted toward the hospital. The world blurred again, sirens echoing through my foggy mind. I remember the paramedics talking, their voices fading in and out. The man stable but critical. The woman's barely hanging on. Good, I thought dimly. Let them believe I was near death. Let them think they'd succeeded. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed under harsh white lights. Machines beeped around me. My body ached, but I was alive. Through the curtain, I heard them, Damien and Melissa, speaking softly to a doctor. We just want to say goodbye, Damien said, his voice trembling perfectly. The doctor hesitated, then agreed. Moments later, I felt a hand touch mine. Damien's. I fought every instinct not to recoil. Mom, he whispered. If you can hear me, I'm sorry. I love you. The words tasted like poison. Then he leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. I hope you've learned your lesson, he murmured. You should never have asked so many questions. Some truths are better left buried. Just like Richard, every hair on my body stood on end. He'd just confessed right there in a hospital room. And standing nearby, adjusting the monitors, was a young nurse named Inez. I saw her eyes widen. She'd heard everything. When they left, she came closer, whispering, Ma'am, if you can hear me. That man hurt you, didn't he? Very slowly, I moved my finger. Once, twice, 3 times. Her breath caught. Oh my God, she whispered. You're pretending. And just like that, hope flickered back to life. Inez was young, but I could see her mind racing behind her calm expression. She bent close, pretending to check the IV. If you're in danger, move your finger 3 times, she whispered. I did. Her eyes widened. Okay, she said softly. I'm going to get help, but you have to keep pretending until we can protect you. Every minute after she left felt like an eternity. I stared at the ceiling, barely breathing, praying she wouldn't doubt herself. Then I heard footsteps, Inez again, this time with a doctor and 2 police officers. Mrs. Black. The doctor murmured gently, If you can hear me, you're safe now. These officers are here to protect you. Relief flooded through me so fast it nearly broke my act. Can you open your eyes? One officer asked. Slowly I did. The light stabbed my vision, but their faces came into focus, the nurse, the doctor, the officers watching with quiet sympathy. My son, I rasped. My son and his wife. They pushed us. Detective Johnson. The older of the two officers nodded gravely. We thought that might be the case. Nurse Ines heard what he said. We've already contacted your husband. He's alive, and he confirmed there's a recording on his phone. Henry! My heart swelled. He was alive and thinking ahead even from his hospital bed. Within an hour, they retrieved his phone and downloaded the audio. The recording captured everything Melissa talking about, making sure the money goes to the right place, Damien saying we were obstacles that needed to go, and their casual plotting on the trail. It was all there, their voices, their plan, their intent. Meanwhile, Damien and Melissa sat in the hospital waiting room, holding hands, crying for the cameras of local reporters. They thought they'd fooled everyone. They didn't know the truth was already spreading through the building like wildfire. Detective Johnson returned to my room with a grim smile. The evidence is solid, he said. We'll arrest them as soon as the warrants are ready. But we'll do it quietly. You're still under police protection. He paused. There's something else, Mrs. Black. We checked your son's finances. He's bankrupt. He owes over $100,000 to private lenders. Very dangerous people. You weren't just inconvenient to him. You were his last hope. I closed my eyes. The betrayal was complete. Damien hadn't seen us as parents. He'd seen us as cash. And the grandchildren, I whispered. They'll be taken into protective custody, the detective said gently. But once you recover, you can petition for guardianship. The thought of raising the children of my would-be murderers broke me and mended me all at once. They were innocent, I told myself. They deserved better. That evening, the hallway outside my room filled with commotion. I heard shouting. Damien's voice angry, desperate. What do you mean, under arrest? My parents are dead. Detective Johnson's tone was calm but firm. Your parents are alive, and they've given us full testimony along with your confession on record. Silence. Then Melissa screamed. That's impossible. They fell. We saw them die. That's another confession, the detective replied dryly. From my hospital window, I watched as officers led them out in handcuffs. Damien's head was bowed. Melissa's face twisted in disbelief. For the first time in years, the air felt clean like the mountain breeze before the storm. In the weeks that followed, the truth poured out like floodwater. Investigators found evidence of forged documents, missing funds, and Damien's attempt to access our bank accounts using fake signatures. The letter Henry had written to Harriet became an essential piece of proof, confirming that we had suspected foul play before the accident. Reporters called it the family betrayal case. Our story was everywhere. Parents survived murder attempt by their own son. Neighbors we'd known for decades stared at us differently now, as if we were survivors of a tragedy too large to understand. When Henry was strong enough to sit up, Detective Johnson visited us one last time. They're both charged with first-degree murder for Richard's death, and attempted murder for what they did to you, he said. They'll spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Henry squeezed my hand. Justice, he whispered. But justice didn't erase the ache. When I stood in court months later to testify, Damien sat across from me in shackles. His face was blank. No remorse, no emotion. Only emptiness. You're not my son anymore, I told him. The boy I raised died the night you killed your brother. He didn't reply. The jury took 3 days to deliberate. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, Melissa broke down, sobbing, blaming Damien for everything. He turned on her, shouting that it was her idea. Their alliance, built on greed, collapsed in a single breath. 1 year later, Henry and I returned to our home. The walls still carried the scent of sawdust and coffee. The photos of Richard smiled down from the mantel, his eyes bright, his spirit somehow still there. We'd begun the process of adopting Damien's children, 2 beautiful souls who reminded us that even from darkness, something good can still grow. At night, when I tuck them in, I tell them stories about their Uncle Richard, how kind he was, how he dreamed of building bridges and helping others. And I tell them the truth that love, when poisoned by greed, can destroy families, but truth and courage can rebuild them. Our story is not one of death, but survival. Not of blood, but of forgiveness. And sometimes forgiveness means breaking the chain so that the next generation can live free of it. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true tales of strength, betrayal, and redemption. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if it were your family?